starting with SA 500 audit evidence. Now, what is this audit evidence? The auditor will give his opinion based on the audit evidence. Basically, we have seen that before starting the audit, auditor will plan his audit. After planning the audit, auditor will perform risk assessment procedures, further audit procedures, right? After performing procedures, auditor will give his opinion. Now, if someone asks the auditor, how did you arrived at this opinion? Then in such a situation, auditor should have audit evidence to show them that based on this, I have arrived at this opinion, right? So auditor will obtain this audit evidence by performing audit procedures, right? We have discussed auditor will perform risk assessment procedure, auditor will perform further audit procedures. Why auditor is performing those procedures? In order to obtain the audit evidence, auditor is performing those procedures, right? We have discussed in SA 330 auditor's responses to assess risk of material misstatement. What are auditor's responses? Audit procedures are the auditor's responses. Now, why those audit procedures are performed? In order to obtain audit evidence. Hope that is clear. Now, what is the objective of SA 500? See, the objective of SA 500 is design and perform audit procedures that will enable the auditor to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Okay, the objective of SA 500 is to enable the auditor to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Now, what is meant by sufficiency? What is meant by appropriateness? We will discuss them. These are the two characteristics of audit evidence. Okay, the audit evidence that the auditor obtains must be sufficient and appropriate. Okay, what is sufficient, what is appropriate, we'll discuss. Next, audit evidence. What is the audit evidence? I have already told you. Information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusion on which auditor's opinion is based, right? That is known as audit evidence. Okay, based on the audit evidence only, auditor will give his opinion. Now, how to obtain audit evidence? I have already told you, by performing audit procedures, auditor will obtain audit evidence. See, by performing risk assessment procedure and further audit procedures. Now, what are some of the audit procedures? Some examples of the audit procedures. See, these are some examples of audit procedures. Inspection. Okay, inspection means examining of records, documents and some assets is known as inspection. Next, external confirmation. You already know, you will send balance confirmation request to third party, that is known as external confirmation. Observation. Okay, you will observe the procedures that the management is performing. Recalculation. Okay, you will recalculate the calculations that have already been done by management. Reperformance, same. Analytical procedures, we have already discussed. I have explained analytical procedure with the example in previous revision class only, right? While discussing SA 330, I have explained analytical procedure, how we can use analytical procedure as risk assessment procedure, how we can use analytical procedure as further audit procedure. We have the substantive procedure we have discussed. Next, inquiry. Inquiry means asking questions to the management or some third party and getting answers or getting audit evidences, right? These are some of the audit procedures. See, these are some just examples of some audit procedures. By performing these audit procedures, auditor will obtain audit evidence. Okay, basically if you see this standard, it is very simple standard. Now, characteristics of audit evidence. What are the characteristics of audit evidence? I have already told you. There are two characteristics. One is sufficiency and another one is appropriateness. What is meant by sufficiency? Sufficiency deals with quantity of audit evidence. Quantity means how much audit evidence has to be obtained. This much or this much or this much. How much? It depends on the risk of material misstatement and the quality of audit evidence. Okay, based on the quality and the risk of material misstatement, the sufficiency will depend, right? If the risk of material misstatement is very high, then more number of audit evidence has to be obtained. If risk of material misstatement is very less, then small number of audit evidence has to be obtained, right? If the quality of audit evidence is high, that means high quality in the audit evidence is there, then low quantity is sufficient. If quality is less, high quantity is required. Okay, so the quantity, the sufficiency of audit evidence depends on risk of material misstatement and quality of audit evidence. What is meant by sufficiency? Sufficiency is a measure of quantity of audit evidence. Now this quality is there na, quality of audit evidence is nothing but appropriateness. Okay, appropriateness is measure of quality of audit evidence. Now appropriateness deals with relevance and its reliability in providing support for auditor's conclusion. Now what is meant by relevance, what is meant by reliability, we'll discuss. See, relevance means the audit evidence that you are obtaining must be relevant for the purpose of the audit. Okay, let's say for example, you wanted to verify whether the fixed assets are there or not. Okay, you wanted to verify this, whether organization is actually having this fixed asset that is being shown in the balance sheet or not. Now for this purpose, what is the audit procedure that you have to perform? You have to physically visit the location and you have to take photocopies of the fixed asset, right? That is the audit evidence that you have to obtain. But what you have done is you have sent a request to the person who is in charge of maintaining those fixed assets, asking to confirm whether the fixed asset is actually there or not. Now this is irrelevant, right? Sending a confirmation with respect to fixed asset is irrelevant audit procedure, right? That becomes an irrelevant audit evidence, right? You have to use a confirmation request in case of bank balance or trade payable balance or any other balances, not with respect to asset, right? With respect to asset, the proper audit evidence, the relevant audit evidence will be to physically visit and obtain the audit evidence, right? So that is known as relevance. Okay, and reliability, basically reliability depends on the source and circumstances in which audit evidence is obtained. We will discuss that. But appropriateness deals with relevance and reliability. Okay, now what is meant by relevance? See, relevance deals with logical connection between the purpose of audit procedure and the assertion under consideration. Okay, see, you cannot hit a lion with this small stone, right? For killing a lion, you need huge equipment or huge knives, right? So there should be relevant audit procedure or relevant audit evidence that you have to obtain. Okay, next, reliability. See, the reliability of audit evidence increases. First of all, reliability is influenced by the source from which it is obtained, the nature and circumstances under which it is obtained. Now, if you see, audit evidence that is obtained from independent outside sources is more reliable than the audit evidence that is obtained from internal people, right? If you obtain audit evidence from outside people, outside independent people, then that is more reliable. You can more rely on that audit evidence than the audit evidence that you have obtained internally, right? And evidence that is generated internally is also more reliable if related controls are effective, right? Next, audit evidence that the auditor obtains directly is more reliable than the audit evidence that is given to the auditor by some other people, right? Next, audit evidence that is obtained in documentary form is more reliable than the audit evidence that is obtained in oral form. Next, Audit evidence provided in original documents is more reliable than Xerox copies or photocopies, right? So the source from which audit evidence is obtained will impact its reliability. Okay. Next, using work of management experts. See, sometimes what will happen is let's say for example gratuity calculation. Now for calculation of gratuity, for providing correct provision with respect to gratuity, management might use some external expert who is expert in calculating gratuity provision. Now that person will be known as management expert. Now he has performed a calculation, and based on that calculation provision has been made in the books of accounts. Now here the audit evidence is the calculation that has been done by the management expert. So when auditor uses the evidence that is prepared by management's expert, then what precautions has to be taken by auditor? Okay, how you have to verify such evidence? Let's see. When information to be used as audit evidence has been prepared using the work of management expert, then auditor has to evaluate the competence, capability and objectivity of that expert. That means that expert whom the management has hired, the auditor has to evaluate his capability, like what are his qualifications. If auditor has previous experience with that expert, then auditor will come to know the capability of that expert. If auditor is not having previous experience, auditor can discuss with those persons who have experience with the work of that expert. Next, auditor can directly discuss with that expert, right? By talking, by discussing with the expert, you will come to know about the level of knowledge of that expert. And you can also read the books, documents, papers that have been presented and written by that expert, right? By doing this, you will evaluate the capability and competence of that particular expert. So now you have evaluated the expert. Next, you will understand the work that has been done by the expert. See, obtain an understanding of the work that the expert has done. How you will how you will understand the work of that expert? Whether there are any standards that are there with respect to the area of work that the expert has done. For example, for audit there are auditing standards, for accounting there are accounting standards. In the same way, whether there are any standards applicable to the work of that expert, and that expert has done the work as per that standards. Okay. Next, whether that expert has taken any assumptions. Okay, if yes, you have to understand the assumptions that the expert has taken, and what is a relevant field of that expertise. So by understanding this, you will understand the work of that expert. After that, you will evaluate appropriateness of that expert's work. See, you have evaluated capability of the expert, you have understood the work that done by the expert. Now you will see whether that work is relevant for our purpose or not. So how you will see whether that work is relevant for our purpose or not? You will check relevance and reasonableness of conclusions that has been made by the expert. You will check relevance and reasonableness of assumptions that has been made by the expert. You will see relevance, completeness and accuracy of the source data that has been used by that expert. So by doing this, you will evaluate appropriateness of expert's work. Okay, so this is essay 500.